Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Vitalogy. Ryan, hello.
Hello, Josh. It's good to see you.
It's good to be seen, and it's good to be here. There's Ryan Paulson.
I am Ryan Paulson, and this here is
I'm-
Josh Rose.
I'm Josh Rose.
Or if you were following us on Facebook this weekend, Jose Rose.
Jose, did it?
Yes.
Did I get? That would not be the first.
That was awesome.
Someone posted.
I loved it.
Did
it was so
like
good.
our official account?
Oh yeah. Oh
Said
yeah.
Jose
I
Rose?
think
Good.
it might
That's
still
wonderful.
be up there. We'll have to check. We'll have
we need to check
but
that.
Yes.
It is not the first time that I have been called Jose Rose. You know what it is? It's I mean, and I don't necessarily think they're making a any statement, because even in the sermon, I was pretty clear that I am Armenian.
Yes.
In
you
the
are.
sermon that came up, we'll maybe talk about that. But
Definitely.
you know that if you type Josh, Jos, okay, H, all right,
Yeah.
but it's Rose. There's the OS is right there.
Yes.
And I have even accidentally
you
typed
called yourself
Jose
Rose.
before. So I guess I can't really be too mad at
if
people.
you see Josh here on campus tonight, feel free to either call
Yeah.
him Josh or Jose.
Jose works, man.
It
That's
works.
great.
It
That's
works.
Great. I'd be honored to be a Jose for a day.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
I can be Jose. That's funny. That's funny. Yeah. It's happened many times
Right
around
on.
here.
Well,
and I
good.
can guess who did it too. So I'll
Yeah.
go give him a hard time,
All right, good.
because it wouldn't be his first time he's done that.
Nice. Nice.
That's funny. Oh, wait, ladies and gentlemen, brought to you by LaCroix.
LaCroix.
That's the beautiful
yes.
sound of opening a lime flavored LaCroix today. Lime flavored.
Brought to you by your sponsors.
I know. Well, it's Wednesday. We're recording this live as always on Facebook and YouTube, and you can join in. We'd love for you to say hi, post this, but a lot of people watch later or listen to the podcast feed.
Yep.
But tonight's a big night
It
around
is.
here.
Yeah. What's going on around here tonight?
We have a worship night. This is our first Wednesday prayer night. Okay,
Mhm.
First Wednesday of the month. Every first Wednesday we do a prayer night. Now it's typically prayer with a little bit of worship added in, right? And tonight's, though, I think it's going to be really good. It's really more of a worship night with some prayer,
Mhm.
and part of that is because we have all of our youth departments are coming over and joining us
Yeah.
for this night
That's
of
gonna be
worship.
sweet.
It's going to be really cool. So junior high and high schoolers are going to be there, along with Lord willing, hopefully a bunch of our adults coming out. And so if you're hearing this, it's not too late to come join us tonight. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah.
And so, man, Nick and a bunch of people from our modern worship team.
And Nick's written some original songs that he's gonna lead us in. And
3 new songs that are like really written for this, around this night, and they flow together really nice.
oh, how cool!
It's
I
gonna be
can't wait.
good.
I can't wait.
It's gonna be good. And then some of our like our youth leadership as well is gonna be joining in. So it's gonna be a great time.
Right on. Right
Yeah.
on.
So little different than our normal prayer nights, but I think that's good. And
Mhm.
really, our worship is a prayer to God as well. So
Yeah.
this is a way to pray.
Right
It
on.
really is. So
Right on.
looking forward to it.
And you got to you taught this weekend.
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Almost on a whole book of the Bible.
Really, I know. It's kind of one of those books that we don't hear from a whole lot. We don't think
don't.
about a whole lot. In fact,
No.
that was one of the interesting things. I had so many people come up to me and say, like, I've never heard a sermon on Philemon.
Yeah.
Now, and I know our church has preached on Philemon before. Pastor Dennis did a long time ago. I'm not sure how
I
many.
think he did a 6-week series.
Did he
on
do
Philemon.
6 weeks?
Yep. Yep.
And I could see you could do that.
You could.
You could
Absolutely.
do that pretty easily. There's a lot in this.
Yeah.
And,
You gave 3 sermons on Sunday, and I'll give 3
you'll
this
give
Sunday.
3.
and-
Exactly.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
sounds about right. It does.
No, I do think that there are some themes in there
Mhm.
that could have easily been standalone messages. And, obviously if you're teaching, like, you wouldn't be able to teach exegetically probably three sermons or
Yeah.
6 sermons, but you could teach like thematically and,
Yeah.
and sort of launch off.
Oh,
in,
exactly.
um,
Exactly. Oh, I had a few of them.
said.
I had a
So,
few of
yeah.
them written in my
Yeah.
extended notes.
Okay. Well, what were some of the,
Okay.
what's on the cutting room floor that you were like,
Um,
gosh, I would have loved to have dove into this a little bit more.
One of the concepts really had to do with with freedom. Because so one of the issues, and I guess we could go back a little bit and let's just tell the story some.
Yeah, there you go.
Of Philemon, a little bit of the.
You're better at this part than we're switching seats. So you normally.
Well, I've already preached this sermon.
You're into the
So okay, the story is Paul is asking a slaveholder to free a slave, right? So this happens to be a slaveholder that he knows personally, that at some point in the past was converted in Paul's ministry somehow.
This is sort of like the movie Crash. Do you remember when like everything at the very end converges and all these stories are intertwined?
Yes.
Like I've read through Philemon a number of times getting ready, and I'm just, every time I read it, I go, gosh, what a quote unquote coincidence that all these people find themselves in the same place. And it's sort of like that movie Crash.
It totally is. That's another sermon that could have been on like the providence of God, right?
Totally.
Like, you totally can do a whole thing on that. And that's pretty, I mean, that's a launching pad right off of that because this, so Onesimus or Onesimus, that's how you spell it. Onesimus, it looks like Onesimus, but and there's these names like Philemon, right? Philemon, you could call it, but Philemon. Okay, there's some funny names, but Onesimus was this runaway slave who ran away and somehow found Paul. Now, there's a lot of speculation. It could have been that Onesimus knew of Paul. And like knew that this guy was someone to be respected. And so he went to Paul, or it could have been this coincidental work of God, right? That he ran away and found Paul in prison.
Or he got imprisoned. He did something wrong.
Yeah, he could have been
himself.
Exactly. Exactly. There's a number of things that we don't really know that we're reading just one side of this letter. So we don't know. We don't hear from Onesimus. He's mentioned other places, or at least one other place. He's mentioned in the book of Colossians as well.
Yeah.
So he's a known figure. Not sure if those books were written at the same time. Anyway, it's a number of things like this. So Paul had never been to Colossae. Okay. So in fact, well, we don't know about that. It's never recorded that he went to Colossae.
There you go.
Okay. So and in the book of Acts, we have all sorts of places that he went. And so it seems like the closest may have been Ephesus, which is about 80 miles away. And so they think that maybe Philemon was in Ephesus at that point. And under Paul's, enjoying Paul's ministry somehow, he comes to faith. Now he goes back into his life as a slave owner, continues his life as a slave owner, okay, because that's just what he knew. His slave runs away, goes to Paul. Then Paul writes this letter saying, sending Onesimus back to Philemon, saying, basically, would you let him go? Now he doesn't say that.
Yeah. Unpack that for us.
Yeah.
He doesn't say that.
He doesn't directly. It's one of those letters you've got to read a couple times to kind of think, what are you asking, Paul?
Yeah.
It's not the most clear, and then yet again it is once you kind of see what he's doing. So it's kind of a long ask.
Yeah,
he begins an appeal. I think it's in verse 8 or 10 or something, and then ends his appeal like at verse 16, 18, somewhere in there, where he's asking, he's sending Onesimus back, and then asking that Philemon would treat him like a brother.
Not requiring.
No, exactly.
But asking. And he's very clear about that.
Yes. So that was one of the launching points that I would love to jump into.
Yeah.
And that gets into a little bit more of I love the philosophy stuff. I'd love to kind of talk about the freedom and how I think that's God's approach to us is one of not requiring, but allowing us to make the right decision, allowing us to choose. And I touched on a little bit in the sermon,
but there was some on the cutting room floor there, huh?
Oh yeah, quite a bit. That's a whole other talk, I think.
Yeah. So, okay, in your mind, what's the importance of that distinction? Why would Paul go in a short letter go to I would consider it to be great lengths.
Mhm.
Or at least he's not ambiguous about that,
Yeah.
right? So he
Yeah.
says it twice.
Yeah.
Why do you think he makes such a strong point out of that?
Well, first, let me just let me just say that I hope you answer that next time because it's really a little bit more in yours. No, I'm just kidding. I do have some opinions of
Fair
that.
enough.
Because we kind of split this letter up a little bit. I mean, sort of the first half of it is what I took, and then the second half. Now, this is a question that actually relates to both halves, right?
It
Because
does.
he says it. He says once in the first half that I'm not going to require, or I'm not going to command you to do what is required.
Right.
Just like quite a way to say it. Like basically, you're saying you really should do this, and
He's like, I don't have to command you to. Jesus did.
totally. And then he says it again. So why does he do that? I really think this is what, at least this is the way I took it. I think that he is trying to teach Paul how to do the right thing,
Mhm.
how to think correctly about this instead of just telling him what to do.
Right.
Okay, so that was I use the illustration. It's what I called it was the moral equivalence of the teaching a man to fish,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
So the old saying is you give a man a fish, he eats for one meal, right? But you teach a man to fish, and he can continue to eat for the rest of his life,
Right.
right? So Jesus could have just said, just do this, and that's where we that's the difference between Jesus and some of the Old Testament laws,
Very much so.
right? The Old Testament laws were just do this, and this is what you do in this minute situation sometimes.
Right.
And it's like it was training people just to do the right thing, whereas Jesus's entire methodology of training and teaching was more on teaching you how to think about things so that you can continually make the right decision.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Paul's trying to do. I think there's probably some very practical reasons too.
Right.
Like for instance, I bet you that Philemon is in a higher like status in
Mhm.
society than Paul. In other words,
Yeah.
like he had more money. He was, potentially more important in society. Now in the church, like in that, so there's these different realms that they lived in, right? So there's the political societal realm, but then in the church world, of course, Paul has all sorts of authority.
Yeah.
But this guy actually seemed to have a lot of authority in that church because the church met in his house,
Yeah.
right? And okay, interesting thing. It seems like there were at least two churches in Colossae. Because it doesn't seem like it's the same church that the letter of Colossians is written to.
Yeah. You're right.
It's so Paul writes a letter to the Colossians, which that one does seem like it's kind of supposed to be taken around.
Yeah, it's circulating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which leads you to think that there's at least two churches in Colossae, maybe more.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Which is, I don't know, kind of a neat look at the church there. It's not like just one city church, which who knows?
Yeah. That's an interesting insight. This idea of compulsion. I think it was Dallas Willard who said that really the goal of transformation is to become the kind of people who do this naturally.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so, like Paul, it almost seems like Paul is holding this carrot out for Philemon to say, like, isn't this the kind of person you want to be?
Yeah.
Right. Not to be under compulsion, but so that your goodness might be of your own accord, that it might flow from your heart rather from a law that you're given or something that you have to execute. So it's like, don't you want to be this kind of person?
Yeah.
Don't you want this type of goodness to flow from you?
Yeah. I love that.
So
no, I think that's exactly that is. I mean, I think that's what he says. But I think that the good news is that we can become the person who this flows out of naturally. And maybe that's even in a sense, this is Paul's way of he believes that you can. So he's not forcing, he doesn't feel the need to command.
Right. No.
He can trust the Spirit to guide him.
And point him in the right way, certainly.
Yes, yeah.
But isn't that who you want to be? It's sort of like when we tell our kids, say you're sorry.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And usually they go, sorry.
Sorry.
Like, well, no, mean it.
Totally.
Well, but the reality is, if they meant it, they wouldn't have to have us tell them or command them, whatever, however you want to
No.
instruct them to say it, right? And
Yep.
so eventually, hopefully, we train them to become the kind of people who, when
Yeah.
they're in the wrong, they say they're sorry without somebody
Yeah.
saying, tell that person you're sorry, because
Yeah.
that person, us,
Yeah.
isn't always going to be there, right?
Exactly.
So really, it's not just when we tell our kids to apologize. Yeah, it is about telling them to apologize, but it's helping them become the kind of people who will actively and freely apologize when they're in the wrong.
Yes, absolutely. And you do that with kids, right? A little bit more, and in hopes that you don't have to do that when they're older,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the beauties. There's a great leadership principle here that Paul doesn't feel like he has to control the situation.
Yeah, that's a
you
good
know,
point.
and that's in fact one of the things that as I was thinking about that, I just wrote down this phrase that I really like as I think about God, that that God is this somehow he's in control, but he's not controlling. You know, that would be I'd love to jump off into that somehow in this, but that's it's really showing who God is,
Right.
that that's the way he leads us. You know, that he doesn't he has control, but he doesn't feel like he's got to tweak every knob, you know, to make us do the right thing.
Absolutely.
And
I think that's where, and you can speak to this as well, but I think that's where maybe some people get confused about God's sovereignty. Is they tend to think it's deterministic and therefore like fatal, like life is fatalistic, right? Because God is sovereign. But I like the way that you said that he's in control, but not controlling. Tease that out for us.
Yeah. You know, I think that what I'd say is that that there's a real sense in that God can get out of the world what he wants, right? So and he's I don't know that I don't see God as tied to all the little details. Okay, and I know this gets complicated and tricky, but I think that there's enough kind of nuance in the world, enough things going on that he can make whatever he wants happen eventually, right? So he can, you know, and how he does that, I don't know.
But the scripture isn't clear on how he does it, but that he does, right?
He does.
I mean, one example, one of my favorites is Psalm 115:3 that says, "Our God is in heaven and he does whatever pleases him."
Yes.
Right? Like he does whatever he wants.
Absolutely. And he can, you know, he can make things happen the way he wants to. So, okay, he's gonna come back one day, and he's gonna bring his kingdom in like the full sense, right? Now that's something that is fully and completely in his hands. It's not like he's just, I just wish that Ryan and Josh would finally get their act together so I can do my thing, right?
Yeah.
That's just not the way that God is.
Yeah.
He can do it without us. He doesn't have to have us do it. At the same time, he wants to, and he uses what we do. It's this whole God working all things for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. There's this, he can somehow even take all things, meaning some bad things, and use them for good. So what that tells me is that he doesn't care. I almost said that. It's not that he doesn't care, but no matter what happens, he can take it and use it for good.
My illustration has been he's like MacGyver.
That's
He can whatever. He is creative. He is resourceful.
Yep.
He's never caught off guard. And if he has a roll of duct tape and a can of tuna, watch out.
Yes, he does. That's right. That's right. But I do think you're right that we get caught up thinking that every decision is like every little thing is planned out by God. In fact, okay, this came up yesterday. We were at a retreat yesterday. That was
Wow.
seems like it was a while ago for some reason. Yesterday was a long day. We had an elder meeting. It was a lot, but we went on a retreat as a staff. Really, really cool. We got away and just kind of spent some time, a few hours, just praying individually, and then we kind of got together in groups, and it was really sweet. Lynette organized it all. Awesome time. But one of the things that, as I was kind of praying, and this is a spot I like going a lot. I feel really comfortable there, and I kind of got into a routine, and I felt myself doing that. And I kind of did my kind of praying routine of kind of centering myself and getting ready to enjoy this time with the Lord. And I just sensed this sense of God saying, like, I didn't have a plan. I didn't sense God was like saying, this is what I want you to do in this time, this couple hours I had. So I just sent this freedom to go and do whatever I felt like doing at the time. So I sat there. It was a little cold. So it was raining a little bit. So I was like, I don't think I want to sit here. And I just felt freedom to go and walk. And then I heard bells ringing. So I was like, the bells meant that there was a service going on. I thought, I'm going to go to the service. And I just went to the service. Somebody texted me in the middle of the service and said, hey, can you talk? And I thought, I'm going to go talk. Like, it was just this, I just felt free there. And it was one of those things, cool. Like, I didn't feel like God was, I mean, at the same time, I felt like God was in each decision. Okay. So it wasn't like, you could see that as, yeah, God was manipulating each situation, or you could see it as God being in that. And if I would have done something different, he still would have been in that.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what it was. And it ended up being cool. A really beautiful time.
I really like that. Yeah. Awesome. I have a question for you.
Okay. Come on.
So your very first point was forgiven people forgive people.
Yes.
And I love that. Here's my question. And it's one I've been thinking about as I've been studying also. And so is there ever a situation as a follower of Jesus where you would say to somebody, you know what, you don't need to forgive them? So and here's one of the things I'm getting at, is forgiveness, does God say to us the same thing that Paul said to Philemon? Do it, but on your own accord, not under compulsion, or are we commanded to forgive, right? So do we have a decision in this?
Yes. So, okay, that's a great, yes. Okay. I think that, I would say it this way, that there is a time, and I feel like I've counseled people. I know I've counseled people in this before, that I've told people, if they're really, really hurt, let's not talk about forgiveness yet. So I've said, I don't think you need to forgive yet. But that's always in my head. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that there's a timeline on forgiveness necessarily.
Oh, that's a really good point.
I do think, however, I do think that our goal is always and ought to be always to forgive. Now, so, and this is where I tried to come out in that idea that freedom frees us was one of the points. So it, forgiveness, did I say free? Forgiveness frees us. Forgiveness ideally leads to reconciliation, meaning that it's ideally with someone else, but sometimes it can't be. Sometimes someone's hurt you and then they go off and die or something, right? And you can never actually, forgive the person, but you can still forgive. You can never forgive them to their face. But forgiveness is something that we do for ourselves often more than anything else. And so if there's an abuser that has hurt you, I don't think that I wouldn't tell most people that you need to go to that person and forgive that person.
Right.
And at the same time, I wouldn't say I know how to forgive in that situation, because I'll be the first to tell you, I don't want to forgive. Like, I just think if there was someone that we knew and loved that got abused, man, that's going to be the hardest for me to forgive that person.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, right. I'm not saying that's easy, And yet, at the same time, I do think that that is one of those things that is expected of us, that is just something that we're supposed to do. So do we have a choice in it? I think the choice is more in how we go about it.
That's good.
But I do think it's a part of our calling.
That's really good. I'm glad you said it that way, because, you know, I think as followers of Jesus, there are times where we can go, I know I'm supposed to forgive, so I'm going to, right?
Yeah.
And in a sense, we short circuit the process and we minimize the pain. But I do think that there's an aspect of forgiveness that demands that we name the wrong and enter into the pain. And so if we just sort of do it mechanically, I know I'm supposed to do this, and so therefore I'm going to, we might miss some of the depths of healing and pain that God is bringing us through.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm glad you said it the way that you did. That I think that's really powerful and really good. All right. You said forgiveness is only an option when people don't deserve it.
Yeah. This one, this one is not one that I had really heard much before.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard it that way. But okay, and so let me be clear. I think this is right. I'm pretty sure it is. In fact, I even said this. I'm pretty sure this is right. But here, in this situation, Paul's asking Philemon to forgive Onesimus, and I really think it should be the other way around.
Yeah,
because here is a slave owner who had a slave, and in our worldview, I think like everyone, if they're a slave, we all think that everyone that's a slave should run away.
Yeah,
like that's the right thing.
Conviction that freedom is a God-given right.
Yes,
liberty is one of our main distinctives as a people.
Yeah. And
absolutely.
so now, okay. So forgiveness, that's in the eye of the person forgiving. So clearly in this situation, I think Paul is writing this for Philemon, not necessarily for Onesimus. Okay, my guess is there was a whole nother conversation that went on with Onesimus, and that this was a step in Onesimus's journey that we don't have access to. So, and that's where clearly Philemon thought that Onesimus had wronged him. So that's where in his eyes, forgiveness was needed. Right. So, because, you can't, if you're wrong, I mean, if you don't think you're wrong, if you think that you deserve forgiveness, then what that really means is you don't think you did it.
Yeah.
So that's where that idea, I think at one point I said, deserves got nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
Which is, by the way, a great line from the movie Unforgiven. I didn't quote it. I just slipped it in. I did that with there's another movie line. I just slipped in two movie lines. One was and I didn't reference it. One was, "Look what you did, you little jerk."
Oh yeah, no, I caught that one.
Did you? Good.
That's Home Alone.
It's Home Alone. Yep, I think a lot of people got that one.
Yep. The week before, I slipped in a line from Survivor.
Yes, that's right.
So in case anybody was watching Survivor,
I forgot to ask you about that. I remember.
Yeah, I was as confused as a goat on AstroTurf.
Goat on AstroTurf.
So
which is great.
Yep. Hey, you don't camp there. You just say it, and for people that get it, they're like
right on.
Home Alone,
right
Survivor.
On, I know,
right on.
I know.
Right on.
And so deserves got nothing to do with it. So you can't say I deserve forgiveness.
Right.
And you can't ever earn forgiveness.
Right.
And so that if that's both true, which I think it is, then the only time that forgiveness is necessary is needed is when someone doesn't deserve it.
Right.
Okay. So it's a gift. It's grace.
And usually when we ask for forgiveness, when we think we deserve it, it tends to sound something like, I'm sorry if what I did hurt your feelings, right? Or I'm sorry if what I did hurt you. Like, you're so weak that got to you.
Yeah.
Well, could you forgive me for that?
Oh,
And it's sort of this like, my intentions were good,
yes,
but you've been wounded. So I deserve to be forgiven because my intentions were good.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
And without any sort of empathy or being able to see things from another person's point of view. I only use that example because I've been guilty of using that example. So, yep.
Sorry. I'm going to say sorry to Beth, and he says sorry to Kelly. We've both done it, I'm sure.
We're sorry we hurt your feelings.
We've done this.
Yeah.
I know. No, we've that tends to be the ones we do it to most. Yeah. And so, but that was what launched me into this idea that here we have this, you don't deserve it until, forgiveness isn't an option, even needed, unless someone deserves it. And yet the situation was that Paul, that Onesimus was the one needing forgiveness, seemingly.
Yeah. And I don't know, you've done a lot of research on this as well. I think that's whole line of, if he owes you anything, charge it to my account. Seems to suggest that maybe Onesimus stole something, or that more than just running away, that there was some sort of wrong that was perpetrated against Philemon.
Yes.
And you have to surmise that, or in a sense, try to get that out of the text. It's not explicit, but it does seem like there's some sort of aspect like that there, doesn't it?
Absolutely. But that's in the second half of the book, so I'd let you deal with that next time. So, but yes, exactly. There seems to be something else going on here. But that's where I wanted to just address the issue there, that, if we're talking about forgiveness, which we are, and it seems like we're setting up Onesimus is the wrong one because he ran away as a slave. That's where I thought, all right, we got to say something here about slavery issue.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And I think I loved your slide about the slave Bible.
Yes. Oh my word. Isn't that powerful?
Yeah. So you got to spend some time at the Bible Museum in DC.
Yes. Yeah.
And
that was
just
great.
Amazing.
That was great. Now, so, yes, okay. DC's just full of museums, and it was great. And so, I had my whole family there,
right,
which was a blessing and a curse. The Museum of the Bible is fun. There's a lot of great things for kids, but there's no way in the world that they wanted to stay there as long as I did.
There you go.
So that was part of the issue. They had been to a lot of other museums over the course of the time. Unfortunately, it was like one of the last ones we went to. So I didn't get my time there. But I did get to spend some time with this piece, which was one of the ones that really stood out to me the most. I'd never seen it before.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never heard of this. And this whole idea of redacting the Bible and, cutting it down, I thought that is the worst thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And it just was such a stark illustration of this very thing, of how wrong this is.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I think it really got at that point is that you really can't use the Bible to justify slavery.
Yeah.
And I've heard people do that.
Well, I'm sure there was a number of people in the South, during the Civil War and civil rights and all that did that very thing.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the statistics on that slide that you showed were just amazing. That they cut out 90% of the Old Testament, 50% of the New Testament, the entire book of Exodus. I mean, you've got
all the Psalms.
The Psalms. They're freedom songs.
Yeah, you don't want to give slaves freedom songs. Apparently, they learned that, at least. And,
it was really, really, really powerful.
Yeah, well, and that's where, just to be clear now, clearly, slavery was something that Christians did. Okay, they owned slaves. They never should have, and it's one of those things that is one of those blights on Christianity in general.
Mm-hmm.
That it was allowed in America, in Europe, all over the place, that in places where people claim to be Christians. And yet, and this is important to point out, though, that at the same time, the places where people are most free in general, even in those times, were still the places where Christianity was prevalent. Okay, so now it wasn't perfect,
Right.
but people were generally more free, have been more free in cultures and societies that have been influenced by this book, by the Bible, because the Bible is a book about freedom.
Yeah.
It really is.
Tom, again, an historian, agnostic historian named Tom Holland. I don't know if you've read any of his works, but he wrote a book called Dominion.
Dominion, yeah.
And in it, he essentially talks about the early church, the rise of Christianity, and the way that Christians contributed to society, and specifically in the West. And he argues in that book that you do not have human dignity and human rights if you don't have Christianity.
Yeah.
And he would essentially say that that is absolutely foundational for the air that we breathe in the West, that would be for equality, for human dignity, for human value, for human rights of all people, is a distinctly Judeo-Christian ethic and conviction. And he does it from an agnostic historic standpoint. He's going, I don't necessarily believe these people were right. I'm just looking at it from a history standpoint, going, we don't get here without that.
I love it.
Essentially, his point is that Darwinian humanism does not lead you to ubiquitous value for the human race.
Whoa.
Like he's like, you just cannot get there.
Yeah. Oh, that's a beautiful. I have that book. I just haven't read it yet. It's one of those things. Yeah, I think I started it and I was like, wow, this is intense.
So
I want to go read something.
But really, like, well written, well researched. And for those of you that are interested in that type of writing that is supportive of Christianity and like would uphold Christianity as a good thing, but not necessarily from a distinctly or only Christian standpoint, his work is phenomenal.
Yeah. In a sense, it's one of those great assets for the church to be an apologetic. So it's not just, we're not the only ones saying that this book is about freedom, right, or that truth happens. Okay, now clearly we are not, this is, and let me be very clear. I would not say that this is we're not like a Christian nation in that way. Like, there's been some Christian principles that were a huge part of our foundation and some of our, the early, our early forefathers, what do they call them? Anyway, them, the founders, but at the same time, it's not like they just took the Bible and created a country out of it. That's just it's not something that you can do. And so we have problems in a country and societal. And so that's one of those things, like I was trying to point out, why doesn't Paul just condemn slavery? It's like it's not really in his lane, in a sense, right? So Paul could say all slavery is wrong. I wish he did. That would have been great. That would have been nice. At the same time, he didn't have the power to do that. To declare it wrong, because it's not like slavery has ever been a Christian thing or a specific religion thing. It's beyond that, a societal thing.
Yeah.
And Paul just didn't have that kind of authority. So yes, he was a big deal in the church, but he was not a very big deal outside of the church. In fact, quite the opposite. He was in jail.
Right. Especially at this time.
He was literally.
Yeah. That's a good point. And I'm with you. I wish he would have been more explicit here. The idea that I'll use, and this may be from N.T. Wright, I'm not sure, but he said something to the effect of that Paul put a time bomb in the institution.
Yes.
And
yes, I think
so. I'm going to talk about that a little bit this weekend.
Good.
And I think that what I would say is that this letter isn't about necessarily, although it does eventually contribute to the abolishment of slavery. That wasn't its intent, but its intent is to free us from the slavery of bitterness and anger and unforgiveness and And you hit on that too, that
Yes.
there's another kind of slavery
Yes.
that the scriptures are pointing to.
Yep.
That's powerful and oppressive, and yet the prison doors from that slavery are open
Yep.
because of the work of Jesus.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. So, and that even, I mean, I think there's even better ways to say it. That could even be another whole sermon.
Right.
Is that here is Paul's asking a slaveholder to free someone to free himself.
Mhm.
Right. Again, that's
Mhm.
really what we're getting at.
Yes.
You know, if you free Onesimus and in the process forgive him, the person that will really be free is Philemon.
Mhm.
Because Onesimus, okay, if I had to speculate, Onesimus is already so free that he's willing to risk stepping back into slavery to do the right thing.
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah.
Like,
only freedom lets you do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So Onesimus at some level didn't need to be freed. It's that it would be better for Paul and better for Philemon if he were free.
Right.
I think it's
really good.
It's really cool.
Okay, so at one point in the sermon, you took us back to the very beginning of the story.
Yeah.
And your point was that God has always been a forgiving God.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we don't often view him that way, but that has always been the case.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us a little bit like this
Yeah.
about this. And I think my follow-up question is, and this is a theological one, is there ever a time where God isn't forgiving? And
okay, go. All right. So I just this is one of these. It's really one of my favorite little observations in Genesis chapter 3, which is when when the fall, we call it, right? So the time when Adam and Eve, these first two humans, they recognize that they have shame. They commit the first sin. There's so much in this. I don't think that it really has all that much to do with the fruit.
Right.
It has a lot more to do with a number of other things going on there. But so it's not like he really cares about the rules. Okay, I don't think that's what's happening here. But that's a different issue.
But he does. Well, yeah, I'll let you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the rules are pointing to something else, right? There was a worship problem that is the real thing that they started kind of wanting to be like God. Now, okay, here's the crazy thing. God had already declared them like God.
Right.
In Genesis 1:28.
In his image.
In his image. And so they're not believing
likeness.
And likeness, exactly. They're not believing what God has already said about them. And they're believing this serpent instead of God. So I mean, so many things going on there. I love that passage. But when they sin, there's very specific language in there that they realize they're naked. But there's this mention in the end of chapter 2, I think it's verse 25, that says that they were naked and felt no shame.
Right.
Which is, the more you think about that, we don't know what that feels like.
Right.
And I don't think anyone since has understood what that really is, because we've been kind of covering ever since. And so here's this moment when they go from innocence to guilt and shame. And so noticing what God says to them has been super powerful to me. It's been just one of those things that I keep coming back to, that he says, "Where are you?" Those are the first words to sinful humans, is, "Where are you?" And in other words, come on out.
Right.
Come on out. No, you don't need to hide from me.
Yes. I loved your point that when God asks a question, it's not to get new information.
Yes, he knows exactly where they are. All right, he is God. So he's really telling them that I'm here and I want you to come out.
Right.
And so, and that's at least with God, that's a lot of what forgiveness is us coming out and being who we are, right? Instead of kind of trying to hide. And so now, if we want to get into this, I think that with God especially, we hide by making excuses. by not confessing, by not asking for forgiveness, but by adding all sorts of other things, trying
The
to look
woman,
good.
she gave it to me.
Yes,
It's
yes.
blame.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
It's totally diversion. Like, look over there.
Right.
Like, look at her. She's the bad one. And then
Yeah.
she does it. It was the serpent, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Totally.
it's like she says the serpent you put here, God. So really, it's your fault,
Yeah.
God. Right? I mean, it's just, I mean, I always wonder what would happen if they would have been like, if they'd just come out, God, I'm so sorry. There's something weird. I'm feeling this thing, and here I am. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what he's wanting for us to say, though.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think that's the archetypal power of the story, right? And I use that term not to say that the story didn't literally happen, but to say that the power of the story transcends what literally happened then, and it causes us to reflect on the way that it happens still in our lives, not just in theirs. Like this, I don't think that Genesis 3 is a story that we're intended to read and think, wow, didn't they screw up?
No.
I think it's one that we're intended to read and go, okay, God, how am I doing the exact same thing? You're offering me the tree of life in connection and relationship to you. And I'm choosing to say, no, I will define good and evil, right and wrong, life on my own terms.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the truth of the matter is we don't know how we would respond to a talking serpent.
Right.
We don't, right? It's the only time that's ever happened. So
yeah,
I mean, there's all sorts of fun.
Okay, so my follow-up question, and you can plead the fifth on this if you want.
Oh yeah, you said
are there times where God doesn't forgive?
Oh my
goodness.
If
this is sort of part of his nature, this is part of it from the very beginning.
Yeah. Is there times when God gets to the end? So, okay. I would have to say no. Only because that's what Jesus asks of us. Because I quoted out of Luke, and in Luke he says, "Forgive 7 times, even if he comes back to you 7 times." Now, in some of the other gospels, I think it's in the 2 other places, he says, "Forgive 7 times 7." 70. Yeah, 70. Yeah, 7 times 70. Excuse me, 490. So now I don't think he's saying once you get to 491, then you can bring the hammer down. Right?
Nope.
It's really saying these are symbolic numbers that these are saying like keep forgiving forever and ever. In both passages, I think that's what he's getting at, and I think that's a reflection of who God is. Not. I don't think that is a reflection of who God is.
Yeah.
That is who he has always been. He's always been forgiving. And so I don't know if I can say that God gets to the end and says, no, I'm just not going to forgive anymore.
Yeah.
And now, and I know saying that is a tough thing to say. And there's all sorts of, that has all sorts of implications. Because even the worst person, even the person who's done the absolute worst things can be forgiven by God. And I don't always like that.
We have a number of examples in our scriptures of people like that, right?
Yes.
Like Paul would say, I'm the worst of the worst.
Oh yeah.
And he wrote, how many books of our Bible?
Yes. I mean, if you were Stephen's mom, how would you feel about the fact that Paul stood there and like kind of ordered the killing of Stephen, more or less, or approved of it? Now, Stephen's mom, if she were alive, how would she feel about having Paul in a position of authority and receiving grace? Grace can be offensive in a sense, right?
Yeah.
And that is, and I don't know what to do with that all the time.
Yeah. I think there's, and I ask it that question knowing that there's no like one verse that we can point to and go, well, clearly.
Yeah.
Right. Because I think, in it was 1 John 2:2, we hear that Jesus died for the sins of the entire world, especially those who believe. Right.
Yeah.
And then I was reading just the other day about this rejection of the Spirit and the unforgivable sin,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so
totally.
you have this this built-in
Yeah,
tension to say, all right, like we know the heart of our Father, right? That when Jesus prays, Father, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. That he's asking something that is in line with his Father's heart, not outside of it. And so that is the heart of our Father, to continue to forgive, even when they kill his son, right? Even when Jesus is crucified, he forgives. And yet it seems as though that forgiveness becomes effective for us upon faith and receiving it. And at that point, it starts to work in us and change us and remake us into his image.
Absolutely. I think that's the right way to put it. And and those are some of those things like, okay, is the unforgivable sin somehow related to not asking for forgiveness in a sense,
Yeah,
right?
I think so. I think it's unwillingness to recognize the work of the Spirit.
Totally.
Yeah, in us, around us, like God at work.
Yeah.
God's going, well, that I can't let go of that offense because it goes very contrary to the thing that you would want in forgiveness. Like those two things can't both be true.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Man.
I wanted to, I guess I would just say the story you told about your grandma at the very end was just powerful,
man.
Really powerful.
Well, thanks. Yeah, it was for me. This week was, that last week was kind of fun because it was one of those stories. In fact, I had mentioned it in writing team as this, like, in fact, we were talking about stories, and all of a sudden I was like, oh, I've got a story about that. It was one of those moments like, oh my goodness. And it was kind of this memory I had of a bunch of stories I'd heard as a kid. So I went back and called my mom, I called my aunt. They both told me pieces of the story. And so I've got like all these elements of this. And I learned a bunch about my great grandmother. So my Nana, great grandmother, born in Armenia. I'm going to write a little bit more about it in a devotional coming out next week. Or I wrote a more of it. It should have been done. Busted on air. It's mostly done, but it is. She was in Armenia. She went through the Armenian Genocide, which is one of those things. It doesn't get talked about a whole lot. About 1 million to 1.5 million. About 1 million in 1915. About 500,000 in the years before 1915 were murdered by the Ottoman Empire. Okay, and which it was a mess. There was a kind of area. It was Western Armenia. It was that was what it was known as. And that area kind of got taken over by Turkey. So now that area is Turkey. And so lots of Armenians live there still. Some of them don't know they're Armenian. I met a guy through 23andMe who is Turkish, but we're related.
No way.
And so in fact, we talked a bunch, and then he stopped talking. I think it's partly because he realized he's Armenian, and I don't know that that's socially all that great.
Wow.
It's so interesting. Now I don't know for sure, but he just stopped talking to me. So I don't know. But it was really neat.
He's like listening. He's like, no, man, it had nothing to do with that. I just didn't
like you. I just thought, no, yeah. You just talk too much. No, it's an interesting thing. So there's all sorts of Armenians still living there, or now they're probably mixed in all over the place, right? So. And a bunch were killed. So my great grandmother gets kidnapped at age 5, I believe. Gets kidnapped by a Turkish family. And the way she told the story was that she lived as a slave.
Wow.
So here is an instance of, in a sense, slavery. She would say that when they took her away from this family, that they had to hire 3 people. Now, I don't know if she knows that even. She must have worked there till about age 9 to 11, somewhere in there. The timeline is hard to tell. But so she worked there for quite a while. She remembered them being terrible to her and it being a really hard life. She says stories of like getting served crumbs for a meal.
Wow.
And saying that, why don't you give this to the cat, to them, because it'll do the cat better. That was some of the like things that she told us. She didn't tell us everything. And sure enough, though, all that to say, she, by another whole crazy string of events, she makes it to the United States. In the meantime, she was taken by an orphanage. There was this edict that came down after the Ottoman Empire fell, and someone said that you can't have any Armenians in your home. So basically, there was a lot of this going on, and they had to pull them out of the homes. She got placed in a German-run orphanage. It was run by German missionaries.
Wow.
They share the gospel with her. She is blown away, and this was one of the things that she said I didn't get to talk about. She would say how she was the lucky one.
Wow.
Her brothers and sisters actually came to the United States before the genocide. They didn't experience it, but they never trusted Christ.
Wow.
She would always say she was the lucky one, even though she went through this crazy time.
Dang.
And so this woman, the Turkish woman, ends up coming to the United States as well, but her husband is gone. She's poor. She has nothing. She knocks on their door. Somehow finds them in Massachusetts. My Nana knocks on their door, and the story is that my great grandfather, who was not a believer at the time, slams the door on her face. Now, this I didn't get to share it all. Slams the door on her face, but my Nana noticed who it was, saw it, talked to her a little bit, I guess, wanted to help her, but he said no. So, like a good wife, no, I'm just kidding. Like a strong woman, like David's wife. What am I thinking?
Bathsheba?
No, not her. The other one. Anyway, goes around her. No.
The other one.
The other one. Darn it! There's another one. Goes around her husband's back to do the right thing. Anyway, blanket. It's gonna come to me. Goes around his back to do the right thing, and ends up supporting her. Now, here's where my grandmother always told me that she supported her till the day that the woman died. My aunt thinks that she only supported her a little bit. And so my aunt watched the sermon and says, you made her look too good. she wasn't that nice to her. So, all right, I'm sorry. She was a hero to me, and she will always be a saint in my eyes.
That's awesome. What a great story of forgiveness. My goodness. Wow. Right on. Well, it was great Sunday, Josh.
Thanks,
really,
man.
really
Thank
good.
that was
I'm excited to piggyback on it this coming week.
I'm looking forward to this.
Finish the series.
So you get to get a little bit more practical.
Yeah, I mean, the title of my message is "Forgiving Our Way to Freedom," and I'm going to talk about the process of forgiveness. And just there's a few sort of little I'd say stones that Paul puts down for Philemon to walk across that I feel like we can too.
That's good. That's going to be, I think that's going to be a good.
Because you really
work well together.
Sort of the theology of it. And so the second half, he really gets into more of the, here's what I want you to do, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, man.
Hey,
yeah.
Any chance you brought a book?
Yes, I did. So, this is our segment. And the segment is Ryan brought a book. Ryan brought a book. But I guess I preached, so I thought I'd bring a book. And it doesn't, oh man, it could kind of relate, but it doesn't directly relate to this. And so I brought a this is a Kindle book. So here's the here we go. Here is the book. It is called Messy Grace. Okay, and actually, in a lot of ways, this was the story. Oh, okay. Messy Grace. Okay, written by Caleb Kaltenbach. Now, this is got the story. Okay, let me just read the tag here. How a pastor with gay parents learned to love others without sacrificing conviction.
Wow.
Okay, this guy has his mom and his dad had him, and then both ended up being gay.
Right.
All right. So his story is in this. It is an amazing, amazing testimony to God's grace. He kind of getting pulled out of this potentially really dark place, and this hard place to grow up as a kid. And he comes to Christ. He is convicted. Okay, so he doesn't sacrifice his convictions about the truth of God's word, and then but also convicted that we need to love better. And it comes out in this. It's great. I won't go into too much about the book because he's coming here to Man Your Faith. In fact, in 2 episodes of this, in 2 weeks,
2 weeks,
we won't do a podcast. Instead, we're just going to stream his talk on Wednesday night. So it'll be a little bit later.
That's November 17th.
November 17th. And so Caleb Kaltenbach is coming, and it's going to be a fabulous, fabulous night. You're going to want to tune in. And
invite your friends to tune in or come out if you're local. We would love to see you here.
Yes.
It's a free event. So
absolutely
one that we're all going to learn and grow. And I'm really excited for it.
Yeah. Gonna be a really neat time. So you've gotten to meet him. I've talked to him on the phone for a bit, and neat guy. Oh my goodness,
great
really,
guy.
really
tons of energy, and he's the kind of guy that I could envision staying after and talking until we had to shut the lights off. And
I think we'll do that. I think we'll do that. All right.
Yeah, Josh, great job, man. Thanks
man.
for diving even deeper in today and answering some questions and unpacking this message with us. So
thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us for the Vitalogy podcast.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. May you live in the way of Jesus with the heart of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
All right. God bless.
Blessings.